Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is iRunShib, or Shib for short. I appreciate you being here today. The goal of this video is to dive into a new theory crafted build. Instead of the Werebear, we're going to be looking at the Druid's Werewolf form and what we could potentially do with that. My buddy Ryan and I were looking into this build, trying to figure out what could be best and how it would synergize towards the late game. We figured we'd make a video for you today. So please go follow him below and stick around. Let's dive right in. So the idea behind this build is heavily spec'd into some passives like Envenom and Neurotoxin. Ultimately, what we're trying to do with this build is build poison on various mobs around the map and then guarantee that we do strong crit damage to said poison enemies. We'll talk about what that means in a bit, but let's dive right into the build. First things first, for our left click ability, we are going to choose Claw. Shapeshift into a werewolf and claw at an enemy for 21% damage. When you do that, your claw attack speed will increase by 10% for the upgrade, and then ultimately claw will apply poison over 3 seconds. Moving down into our main ability, Shred. So this is where there's a little bit of point of contention as to what we want to do, but on Shred, shapeshift into a werewolf and perform a trio of combo attacks. First attack deals a percentage damage, second attack does the same, but the third attack will deal a larger finishing move, dealing more damage. As we spec it forward, you're going to gain attack speed and heal for your maximum life if an enemy is hit with this ability. And then where the contention kind of lies is right here. We are trying to decide whether we want it to be where you're going to have a dash. When every single time you're doing the second and third strike, you will have a dash. So it might be good for mobility, or we might have another chance of adding poison with these abilities. I personally think dash might be useful because we don't have a dash on this build. The passives, we're going to increase our critical strike chance against closer enemies. That's going to be important. And then you gain movement speed while in werewolf form. Since we're going to be in wolf form for the vast majority of this, it's actually really strong to have some movement speed on the build as well. For the defensive abilities, we decided to choose Cyclone Armor instead of Blood Howl, which is going to allow you to heal for 20% of your maximum life. And you can spec it so that it'll increase attack speed as well, but I just don't see that much utility in it. Whereas Cyclone Armor has a passive where you gain 20% non-physical damage reduction, but also if you activate the ability, if you click the ability, the winds will rapidly expand, knocking back enemies. So if you're in an oh shit situation, you can click that ability, knock everyone back. And it'll also slow them who are knocked back from the Cyclone Armor, are slowed by 40%, so it's great for chasing down. And then last but not least, enemy knocked back by Cyclone Armor are also vulnerable, so they'll take 20% more damage from your abilities. I just think this will synergize much better than Blood Howl. Moving down into our companions, we chose to go with Wolves. Wolves will summon 2 wolf companions that bite enemies for 8.19 damage. If you activate the ability, it will send the 2 wolves to dive onto the enemy, dealing a significant more portion of damage. Wolves deal 20% increased damage to immobilize, slowed, or poison enemies. So obviously the 20% across the board increased damage because our enemies, for the most part, should be poisoned. And then when you critically strike, which you'll see some of our abilities on this build will guarantee crit strikes, your wolves will gain a percent attack speed increase for a certain number of seconds. Moving down into where we start diving into the super poison spreader, and that is Rabies. Shapeshift into a werewolf and perform an infectious bite on a target, dealing almost 30% damage and applying a 55.65% poison damage over 6 seconds. But the cool thing is, infected enemies will then spread rabies to other targets surrounding them. So it spreads the poison out across everyone in the area. Rabies poisoning damage has also increased the damage over time. Rabies poisoning damage increases over the lifetime, dealing 4% bonus damage at the max duration. And then Rabies deals its total poisoning damage in a lesser amount of seconds than a longer amount. So essentially the poison will be faster acting. On top of that, we talk about the passives that we were speccing into before that we think are pretty much the crux of the build. And that is poison enemies are slowed by 24% once you max that out. And then poison enemies take an additional critical strike damage. Moving down into our ultimate, we will choose Lacerate. Lacerate, I don't know if you guys have any idea of kind of what this would look like. It's essentially like a Juggernaut ulti from Dota 2 or a Monk ulti from Heroes of the Storm. What you're going to do is you're going to shapeshift into a werewolf. You're going to become immune and quickly dash in an area of effect between with 10 times between any enemy in that area. So if there's just one enemy, it should be 10 dashes on the same person. It'll deal 420% damage, which is super strong. Each time Lacerate deals a critical strike, heal for 3%. And then Lacerate's initial strike is guaranteed to critically strike for 200% damage. Strong damaging ulti, one of the highest damage ultis I've seen so far. And then for our capstone, which we're not going to be able to unlock in the beta, we are going to choose Lupine Ferocity, and this guarantees critical strikes. Every 6 werewolf skill hit will critical strike and deal 60% increased damage. So for our spirit boons, like we talked about in the werewolf video, you get to choose one of each category, that being deer, eagle, snake, and wolf once you hand them a boon. And then once you've unlocked all 4, you can then specialize in one, so you can choose 2 of the same category. So for the deer, we're going to choose 10% reduced damage from elites. This is kind of up in the air. We could do reduction of control pairing effects. We could do thorns. We could do maximum spirit. That's kind of up in the air. For eagle, I'm choosing 5% critical strike chance increase. I think that's really strong, as well as 30% critical strike damage, guaranteeing, since the fact that we are guaranteeing critical strikes with our capstone, this is only going to be out. This is a must in the build. Critical strikes with shapeshifting skills heal you for 3% of your maximum life. And then last but not least, dealing damage has a 15% chance to restore 10 spirit. I think that's going to be necessary, as we may need some spirit gain in this build. For some ideas of stuff to look out for legendaries, there's a bunch of very strong ones, but just to show a couple. While dashing, Shred seeks out nearby poison enemies. So now Shred, and we expect him to the dash, it'll focus on the poison enemies, and it'll do burst damage based on a percentage of the poison damage that they have on them, which is really cool. Your wolf companions are now werewolf companions. Werewolf companions deal percentage additional damage and can spread rabies. That might be one of the strongest ones. Werewolf form is now your true form, and you gain +2 ranks to all werewolf skills. I think that's also really cool. Increase your damage with critical strikes by a certain percentage. And then last but not least, up to a percentage chance to trigger a poison nova. While there are a number more of poison enemies nearby, you deal increased damage. So all of this stuff will synergize even as you get into the Paragon system in the end game. So that's going to do it for the werewolf build for us today. I can't wait to get hands-on with this stuff in the beta. If you are interested in this kind of content, hit that subscribe button down below. Come on over to Twitch and hang out with us. Join our clan on Diablo. I'm excited to see all you guys there. Thank you for being here, and I'll catch you guys soon.